Today is Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. My name is Chris Grudnitsky. I'm the Professional Development Coordinator for the Eastern Shore Regional Office for the Maryland Department of Health's Developmental Disabilities Administration. We welcome you to today's Let's Talk Tech webinar titled Employment and Low-Tech Possibilities. If you would like to use closed captioning so you can read what's being said, click this button. Sometimes the transcription is not exact, but it's pretty close. Today's presentation is available on the handout section. Click here where you see the paperclip to download the presentation slide deck. The webinar is also being recorded and will be made available this week on the DDA YouTube channel under the DDA Let's Talk Tech series playlist. All attendees are currently in listen-only mode and your mics and cameras are turned off. If you have a question you would like us to read and answer, click here where you see the question mark to add your question. And now I'd like to turn the mic over to Stephanie Jones, DDA Director of Innovation. Good afternoon, Stephanie.
Good afternoon, Christina. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well this afternoon. I want to thank you all for coming and joining us once again as you continue to support our Let's Talk Tech series. Today, we have two dynamic presenters who are no strangers to us, both from Maryland Department of Disabilities. We have Lori Barong, the Executive Director of Maryland Technical Assistance Program, and Nora Walker, Communication and Fabrication Coordinator. So, without further ado, good afternoon, ladies. Lori.
Good afternoon, guys. I'm popping on the screen and then I'm gonna pop off because of the weird angle of my camera. But I am really excited to be here and to walk everybody through some AT ideas to support employment. So with that, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Christina. Thanks for the offer to be here to talk about assistive technology. And I always like to lead when it comes to AT and employment with the idea that the right supports can empower somebody to work. Assistive technology really does provide the appropriate accommodations so that folks can get back into the workforce or get into the workforce with the needed supports in order to get their jobs done. We can go to the next slide. So let's start with the question, what is assistive technology? Well, it's kind of anything that helps an individual really perform tasks in their daily lives. When we talk about assistive technology, we always stress the fact that there is no one size that fits all. So for every individual person, there is a skill set that that person has with technology. There is a comfort level. There is a willingness. There are certain tasks that they want to accomplish. There are certain environments they need to accomplish them in. And all of those factors come into play when we're thinking about the right AT supports to help somebody. So whether a person's working from home, whether they're working in a busy office, whether they're answering phones or responding to emails all day, whether they're making widgets or stocking shelves, you know, all of those different things, all those different tasks require different types of supports. And so there's no one size fits all. But when we talk about AT, it really is like any type of device or software or thing that's going to make it easier for somebody to accomplish those tasks, whether they're at work, they're at home, or they're in school. Next slide. So today we're going to explore some AT ideas and some accommodation ideas to really support folks with a broad spectrum of disabilities in the workplace. Next slide. First of all, there is a law, and this law provides rights to individuals with disabilities. I know we've all heard of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. It was passed in 1990. And this law provides certain provisions. one of those specific to assistive technology is the right to a reasonable accommodation in the workplace. And a reasonable accommodation can look like a number of things. It can be job restructuring. It can be, modifying the facility in some way to make it more physically accessible. But it can also include acquisition or access to assistive technology and using devices or using specific services that allow that individual to use their skill set to get their job done. So it really is providing a piece of the puzzle so that that full picture can be sort of created, so that employee in that workplace with the right skill sets can get that job done if they have the right equipment to support them. Next slide.
Excuse me, Lori, just a second. Christina, people are saying in the chat that they can't see the slides.
Okay, let's see here.
I know I can see them on my end.
I could.
But I don't know
I
if that's
could see
helping.
Can we see?
I can see them on my end, but I don't know about the folks joining.
Yeah, I could see them on my end as well. So I think we could see them because nobody's saying. Yeah, they got the thumb. We got the thumbs up, so they can.
Okay.
Thank goodness. Okay, Lori, continue.
Okay. And for the folks that are listening, you didn't miss a lot visually, so don't worry. But what we're really going to look at today are different solutions in the workplace. We're going to cover a whole bunch of different things, but examples of AT that can be used in the workplace. Again, we're going to look at some of these, but we're going to talk about the physical workspace, the desk, the lighting, the way the desk is set up. We're going to look at different tools that can be used if you are deaf and hard of hearing, or if you are blind or low vision, if you have some physical limitations. So we're going to look at all of these different ideas of tools that could be used. Next slide. So first, let's think about the environment. When we talk about assistive technology, as AT specialists or practitioners, in our realm, we're looking at 4 things. We're looking at the person, we're looking at the environment, we're looking at the task, and we're looking at the tools. Oh no, I see some thumbs down, so I'm not sure if people did not see the slide change. For the folks on the webinar, do you see a screen that says environmental considerations? Okay, good. Thumbs up again. We're good. I'm not sure what's going on. But when we're looking and thinking about environmental considerations, we're really thinking about or any AT really. We're thinking about the person, the environment, the task, and the tool. Those are the 4 things that are most important. And we start with the person. So the person understanding what that person's strengths and weaknesses are, and then the environment and where they are performing these tasks, what those tasks really are that they need to accomplish. So again, what is the scope of the job? And then we start thinking about the tools that are going to support them. And from a practitioner standpoint, we always start from low tech, and then we move ourselves to mid tech to high tech, with the idea being if it does not take a lot of adjustment to make something more accomplishable for somebody, then we're going to go with the lowest tech solution. So starting with the environment, we want to think about that office space, and we want to think about the desk. Physically, where is that person located? What are they, what does that look like for them? Next slide. I want to think about these sensory observations. So in that environment, what is the noise level? What is the level of distraction? Are they easily distracted? So there's a cue or clue there. Maybe we need to think about what limits distractions. Is it an open office space or closed? What is the lighting like? Does somebody have a sensitivity to certain types of lighting? Too much lighting, not enough lighting? What is the desk like? Is it sort of a standard desk that you sit at? Would they benefit from something that's, a sit to stand desk so the person can stand up on occasion? Do they easily get fidgety? What is the chair position like? So all of these are things that we want to think about when we're considering the work environment for that individual. And that very well could mean that they're not sitting at a desk at all. They could have a job, they're stocking shelves, they're running merchandise back and forth. But we still want to think about what does that look like for that employee and what is going to help them get their job done more efficiently, better, with more ease. Next slide. So knowing your working zones, if you are sitting at a desk, really understanding what your space should look like and how it's going to work for you. So we have that primary working zone. That's where when we're sitting at our desk, we have our keyboard, we have our mouse. That secondary zone is right where our monitor sits, where our phone sits, that sort of reachable, easy access. A lot of times our coffee is sitting right there too. And then we have that non-working zone. That's like the outer corners of our desk. That's where all those extra things sit that we might need to reach for on occasion, but we don't need to get to in and out easily. So thinking about, structuring your space, what does that look like? How does that work for you? And this is especially important if you're supporting somebody who has some physical limitations, even, carpal tunnel. How are they sitting? How are they working at their desk? These are all important things to think about as we consider what types of assistive technology is going to support someone. Next slide. So it leads us right into computer access. What can we do to make that space, that primary and secondary working zone of our desks, really benefit us? Next slide. We can start with what type of keyboards we use and how we interact with those keyboards. So on the screen, I have some different images. This is not all encompassing of all of the types of keyboards or typing aids that are out there. This is just a small sample. So in the upper left-hand corner, that is a tablet, and that tablet is sitting on a little stand. And in front of that tablet is a high contrast mini keyboard. It's a Bluetooth keyboard. It just connects to the tablet. So if somebody has to have a tablet, they're walking around all day, maybe they're doing inventory, but then they have to go sit back down at a desk and input information or follow up on information, they might benefit from having then a keyboard in front of them when they're sitting at that desk. In the upper right-hand corner, it's a little bit hard to tell, but that is an armrest. It mounts to the desk itself, and then you can rest your arms in it. So again, if you have shoulder pain, elbow pain, even neck pain, whatever it might be, you can use something like those armrests. They swivel and they just reduce the strain that's on that upper body. And then there's certainly types of typing aids. These are devices, you can clip them to your hands, you can wear them almost like little rings on your finger to type, all sorts of ways that you can interact with a keyboard. And again, this comes down to thinking about that person, their environment, and the tasks that they need to accomplish so that we can then fit them with the most appropriate tool to get that job done. Next slide. Keyboards themselves. This is something we constantly have coming in and out of our assistive technology library. People are frequently borrowing all types of keyboards. So we have standard keyboards. That's what we see on the left-hand picture there. Just kind of run-of-the-mill, nothing particularly unusual about it. But next to that is an ergonomic keyboard, and you can see that the way it's created, it's kind of curved. The hands get to come in at like an angle to type. Again, that's great if someone's experiencing situations like carpal tunnel, back injury, shoulder injuries, having an ergonomic keyboard can really make the difference in that comfort level when sitting at a desk all day. Next slide. We also want to talk about mouse alternatives. So we all have our standard computer mouse. We know what that looks like. I have it sitting right here on my desk. But there's a lot of other ways to use a computer mouse. And lots of times you can use a mouse with your laptop, just with a little Bluetooth USB plug. You can alternate the computer mice on a standard desktop, whatever it is. There's lots of ways to work around this. And we're going to go to the next slide. I'm going to show you some that are highly popular. So first is the vertical mouse. This is really helpful if instead of holding your hand flat all day, you would be more comfortable holding your hand vertically. And most of us are actually more comfortable with our hands vertical. So it's still that standard mouse function that we're used to, the left and right click, the scroller. But instead of having your hand flat, you have it rotated upward in a vertical position. So again, this takes the stress off your wrist, takes the stress off your arm, and can be really helpful for folks when they're just, sitting at a desk all day and starting to experience some of those typical pains that we get when we are Monday through Friday computer users for 8+ hours a day. Next slide. Trackball mice, these are great. So this is a computer mouse, and you can see to the right of the mouse, you have your left and right clicker and your scroller, but then you also have a trackball. So that just allows you to move the mouse around your screen without having to move the whole mouse itself. So you're using that little ball on the left-hand side to move your mouse around your computer screen as your cursor, right? But you don't have to move your arm. That can be really helpful for folks who have tremors, who have sort of unsteady hand movements. If you get easily tired, your hand gets tired, this can be really helpful. And it's actually also really useful if you're working in a very tight space. So if you don't have a lot of room to move your whole mouse around your desk, having a trackball mouse is a lot more efficient because you're not moving the whole thing. You're just moving that little rolling ball, and that controls the cursor on your screen. Next slide. And there's also a type of keyboard called a roller mouse. This was created to actually reduce that repetitive strain that people experience, again, being long-term computer users. It's a little different. It takes a bit of time to get used to, but you have your standard keyboard. And then in the picture, the person's right hand is sitting on the actual trackball. It looks like a long rod. You kind of move it around. And then the left hand can be used, and the right hand too, for left and right clicking. But it's just another way to sort of interact with a keyboard that might be beneficial for someone. And I always say this, with the clients that we serve, it's really important to go through that framework where we talk about what, again, the individual's strengths and weaknesses are, what their environment is like, what the tasks are that they're trying to accomplish, and then fit them with the right tool. Because something like a roller mouse may not be the most appropriate solution for one person, but it may certainly be the most appropriate solution for someone else who has a very similar injury or disability. So again, it really comes down to that particular individual and what their comfort levels are, and sort of what they want to try and how comfortable they want to be with that technology. Next slide. There's also a lot of built-in accessibility features in our computers themselves. So whether you're using a mobile device like an iPad or a smartphone, or you're using a laptop, whether it's iOS or it's Microsoft Windows based, all of our machines have accessibility features built into those operating systems. They cost nothing. You just need to turn them on. So there are options to increase magnification, to change contrast, to adjust your keyboard settings within your operating system, to adjust your mouse settings. You can make it so that your cursor moves more slowly. You can make it so that your cursor moves faster. You can change the size or the shape of your cursor, the color of your cursor. You can turn on text to speech so that what is on your computer screen is read out to you. So lots of accessibility features already built into the systems that we're interacting with every day. And sometimes it's just a matter of figuring out what it is you need, how it's going to support you, and then getting it set to the right, getting it set correctly so that it works for you. Next slide. There's a couple other things I often encourage when we're talking about, using our devices in the workplace. And that is some tips that you can use. So if you're working with somebody who is highly distracted, who might find themselves drifting back to checking their phone a lot, right? And maybe that's not the gist of their work. Maybe they need to be focusing on something else. There are recommendations you can make. You can suggest turning off the notifications during a set period of time during the day, so they're not getting notifications, drawing their attention back to those devices. They can set focus time on their devices. You can use your device to prompt you throughout the day. So you can actually create your schedule, have little alarms go off. Those alarms can have labels, they can have pictures, just kind of prompting the person from one step to the next to the next. So we can work our devices to our benefit, whether that means we reduce the number of things coming at us from our devices or we increase the number of things coming at us from our devices. But they can work to our benefit. And again, going back to that framework, what is that person's strengths and weaknesses? What are they trying to do? And where are they trying to do it? And that's going to help us figure out if we can use something like the features in an smart device to really support them, either to help them do things more or do some things less. Next slide. Let's talk a little bit about vision. So there are lots of different supports out there for folks in the workplace when it comes to individuals who are either blind or low vision. Next slide. First, let's think about that environment again. Let's just kind of scan what the environment is that this person is working in. So if you are supporting somebody who is low vision or blind in the workplace, one of the first things we recommend is making sure that individual gets a tour of the workplace, some sort of orientation to know where things are. So somebody's going to show up at the work site, but they're not going to know where the restrooms are, where the front security desk is, where anything is, right? So really helping somebody orient to the physical space, ensuring that there's adequate lighting in those common areas, the hallways, the parking, the restrooms, making sure that there's the lighting that is needed. There are mapping tools that can be used. Some places incorporate wayfinding in their buildings. That's something we can always talk folks through as well. Making sure that there are, high contrast signs that are visible. Just all sorts of things that you want to think about in terms of making sure that the space itself is as accommodating as possible for somebody who is blind or who is low vision to really independently navigate that space without needing to ask for assistance. Next slide. And then magnification. This is certainly an area that we have a wide variety of devices to support exploration for folks. So there's lots of low-tech magnifiers out there. The middle picture on the right-hand side is a handheld magnifier. If you push the little button that's on the handle, it actually creates a light as well. So it's a lighted handheld magnifier. Above that is a desktop magnifier. So that allows somebody to put documents, books, materials under that, what looks like an iPad, and then that allows for magnification, for contrast, changing the contrast. And then at the bottom, that's a little handheld digital magnifier that can be taken around. Somebody can use it to, go to meetings, to read business cards, to sort of like mobily access whatever print that they need to interact with. So again, these often provide levels of magnification, so you can change how much it magnifies, you can change the contrast, you can often use them to take a snapshot picture and then just kind of hold it up, so that you don't necessarily have to hold the magnifier over that print the whole time. And some do include what's called OCR, which is where it reads aloud that print. But there's also other options for that. Next slide. So OCR, it's what it does, what it says it does. It's optical character recognition. It allows somebody to take a picture of text, and then that text is read out loud. Next slide. There are a couple different ways that people can use OCR in a more sort of mobile way. The first is there are apps that do this. Seeing AI is one of them, but there are many. It is a free app. You load it on your phone, you hold your phone over some printed text, you take a picture, and it tells you, it reads out what that content is. You can also do it, like you can hold it in front of a group of people, and it'll tell you what's in front of you. There's, a room full of individuals sitting at chairs, or it's going to describe that scene to you. There are wearables. So the lady on the screen on the left-hand side, she's kind of pointing to something on the side of her glasses. That is called the Orcam MyEye. It's a little device that clips to eyeglasses, and it actually does the same thing. You sort of point it in the direction of a sign, toward print, at a face, and you press the little button and it tells you what's in front of you. It reads the content that's on that sign or on that piece of paper. Ray-Ban Meta glasses also do the same thing. So there's lots of different ways that you can use OCR to your benefit, and it's certainly mobile enough that whether you have it on your phone, whether you have it in your eyeglasses, it can make your sort of day-to-day functioning in the workspace a lot easier if you have that as an option with the tasks that you're doing. Next slide. There's also lots of magnification and screen reader options. I did mention there is magnification built into the operating systems within our laptops. There's magnification on our phones. There is what's called narration, which is within the operating system of our computers, where it narrates or reads everything out loud to us. But there are also software programs. The software programs that are sort of standalone tend to be a bit more robust and offer sort of more in-depth and thorough features than what you might find in those free versions in our operating systems. But sometimes you don't need all the bells and whistles, but sometimes you do. So certainly there are lots of software options out there that can provide increased flexibility with both magnification and screen readers, and some that do both. Next slide. Another really important piece of technology that you'll find with folks who tend to be blind and in the workplace are Braille note takers and Braille displays. These are little devices that are mobile, and they typically go with that person, whether they're sitting at their desk or they're going to a meeting or they're talking to consumers or clients. They're going to have this with them. We can go to the next slide. So a Braille note taker is a standalone device. It usually has some buttons on it that are consistent with taking notes in Braille, so it doesn't always look like a standard keyboard. It doesn't require any connection to anything, but it allows somebody to take notes via their little device. Again, it's just kind of got this Braille keyboard display, so it looks a little bit different than a standard QWERTY keyboard. And then a Braille display is where somebody, again, has that keyboard that's like a Braille keyboard. Sometimes it is a QWERTY keyboard if that person's more familiar with the standard QWERTY keyboard. But it also has this little section at the bottom that has what's called a refreshable Braille display. So as they are taking notes, they're also reading content from their computer because it's usually connected via Bluetooth. And they are actually reading what's on the screen the way you and I might just read the words on a screen. They are getting that content presented to them via Braille on their device. So they're able to read via Braille. So Braille note takers, Braille displays, they are frequently used within the workplace for folks who are blind. Next slide. Hearing supports. This is another really robust area that I like to dig into. We can go to the next slide. First, let's think about, again, that space, that environment. What are the accommodations that we want to think about? So if we're working with someone who is either deaf or hard of hearing, we want to think about that workspace. Is there a telephone? Are they in meetings a lot? What are those things that those devices that they're interacting with, so we can make sure that the individual has what they need to most effectively get their work done. So again, if there's a lot of communication happening, they're making calls with constituents during the day, they're having meetings with colleagues, they're presenting trainings, all of those are going to be clues into figuring out what type of assistive technology is going to best support the person. And then also really knowing, what does this individual already use? Do they wear hearing aids? If they wear hearing aids, great, then we can figure out what equipment is going to work with those hearing aids to really make sure that they are having the most accommodating experience as possible. Next slide. So environmental considerations for that employee, making sure there are visual and sensory alerting systems. If that individual's sitting in an office by themselves and people come and knock on the door, they might not hear that there's someone knocking. But it's easy enough to put up a little mobile doorbell ringer and flashing alert system so that, oh, I know to turn and look out the door because somebody's out there. Preferential seating, if that helps, particularly at meetings, sitting closest to the speaker, and really thinking about lighting. If the individual is dependent on an ASL interpreter, what is the lighting like? How can they best see that person? You don't want to be sitting in a dimly lit conference room if they are depending on being able to see across the table to have the interpreter, to be able to see that interpreter. Next slide. So amplification telephones, these can be provided, via a landline. So there's, plenty that you can plug in as a landline. And then you can also utilize amplification in a smartphone as well. But telephones are vital. If you're sitting in a general workspace and you're on the phone day in and day out, answering phones, talking to the public, having an amplified telephone can make a world of difference so that you're correctly hearing those conversations, so that you can really make sure that you're not missing anything. Next slide. Caption telephones is another one. So these are telephones that literally, present the conversation in text as well. So for some folks, this is going to be really, really helpful when they're sitting on the phone. And a lot of these can also pair with hearing aids as well to provide sort of that amplification right into the hearing aid, but that extra visual support of having the captioning is actually going to be particularly helpful. I know I can speak anecdotally. When we watch TV at home, we always have the captions on. We don't need to, but we always have the captions on, and I find it far easier almost to follow what's happening when I'm seeing the captions and hearing the content. Next slide. And using ASL interpreters, this can be where someone is there in person. This can be through video relay, which is another way to accommodate an individual. So if somebody comes in and they are deaf and they're requesting an interpreter, video relay, video remote interpreting is another method where you just dial up your interpreter and that person is on the screen to provide that sort of interpretation service between this, the individual who is hearing and the individual who is deaf. Next slide. FM systems are another great tool. They essentially amplify and transmit the sound. So that can be, within a meeting space. It can be within, it can be something connected to your computer to provide amplification. FM systems work in lots of different ways, but they are excellent tools to provide amplification along with, using that hearing aid. Next slide. FM systems in the office, they can be used lots of different ways. So we have 3 different pictures here. Top left, we've got a group of people that are sitting at a table, and on that table are little boxes that are kind of picking up the sound of those voices that are speaking. And you can also see that there is a man at the front of the room. He has a little transmitter around his neck. He is also speaking, and it is transmitting to those boxes. And for the individual with the hearing aid who is using the FM system, they're able to more directly hear those voices. Next slide. So some of the tech that can be used to help with amplification, these are some devices right here in our AT library. We have wireless connect clips. So in the top left corner, there's a teacher. She's wearing a little amplifier around her neck. She's teaching, and there is a student in that class who has a hearing aid, and that student is hearing her voice directly in his or her hearing aid. So it's helping with sort of separating out the other ambient noises, the other chatter, and really sending that voice right to their ear. There are portable induction loops. So this is a counter induction loop. So for somebody who is wearing a hearing aid, they can turn on the T-coil in their hearing aid. And when they are at, let's say, a counter, and they are talking to the person on the other side of that counter, let's say, at a doctor's office, the voice is going to transmit better to their hearing aid. So this is going to help create like a little sound system that, takes that the speaker's voice and sends it right into the hearing aid. There are room amplifiers, which are great, especially in like classrooms or lecture halls, but could also be used in a large conference room if there's a presentation happening. There are also portable FM systems or portable, amplification systems like we see in the bottom left-hand corner. And then in the bottom middle, there is an amplification system that actually just sits around somebody's neck, and it picks up via Bluetooth the noise, the speaking, and then transmits right to earbuds or to hearing aids. And to the right of that is another type that can be worn like around somebody's neck and right directly into their ears. So lots of amplification options for folks who are hard of hearing. Next slide. Alerting systems, I mentioned this earlier. Again, going back to that idea of somebody in an office, they might not see that there's somebody coming to the door. You can use an alerting system to let them know. You can have it set to a little doorbell. The person rings, the visitor rings the doorbell, and the person sitting at their desk sees the light flashing in front of them. They can look up, they can look at the doorway and see that there's somebody there to talk to them. So alerting systems can be used in the office, they can be used at home, lots of different ways to sort of build in alerts and notifications. Next slide. Live transcription, this is typically via, apps. So what we see here are mobile transcription apps. There's Live Transcribe, Otter AI, and Nagish. They all do slightly different things, but they are all apps that provide real-time, live AI transcription of conversations that are happening. They are great because they're mobile, I will say that the free versions don't provide a user a whole lot of time. So you might get, let's say, 30 minutes a month in the free version. That's not a lot if you're depending on it to go to meetings, or you're using it if you're going to hearings or something for work. So keep in mind that the paid versions provide a far more robust option. In the workplace, it is important to keep in mind that some of these will store that transcription, and that can be important because if you're in sensitive meetings where you are talking about things that you don't want to sort of be stored anywhere, you need to think about how that transcription is going to sit and where it's going to sit. So there can be some concerns around that depending on what the situation is. Next slide. There are also, captioning tablets. So on the screen, we see a tablet on the left-hand side. This kind of does the same thing. You don't even need an internet connection. It literally just picks up the voices. It does not tell you who's speaking, but you do see a constant rolling stream of that conversation. There are also caption glasses. So somebody can put on a pair of standard glasses. You can get them with prescriptions or without, but for the wearer, on the inside of the lens is the actual live transcription of what is being said. And then there is something called an Ubi Duo that is like two linked computers. That's kind of what they look like, but you can type back and forth in real time and have communications. They're great sort of in public service spaces. So if you don't want to share like a phone number to text back and forth, or you're in a medical office and you're talking to a nurse, but you're having some trouble hearing, you can use something like the Ubi Duo to have that real-time conversation. Nothing is stored. It's just right there for that instant communication without having to share any personal information like a cell phone number. Next slide. And then turning on captioning, just like we were offered at the beginning of this session, you can turn on the closed captions in meetings. Again, these are often via AI, but it is pretty spot on for the most part when we're talking about captioning. It can be done in Google, Zoom, WebEx, Teams. All of them offer the same feature. Next slide. Sorry, something popping up on my screen. So executive functioning and supports. So this is what can be put into place to help somebody with time management, organization, working memory. I do have a whole separate presentation that I do on this. So I'm just going to touch on a few highlights. We can go to the next slide. For folks who might have trouble with executive functioning skills, so we're talking about, maybe somebody who has ASD or ADHD or learning disability, things like visual aids, color coding materials, using a task sequencing app, clearly defining the schedule, clearly providing written instructions for work, those are all vital to making sure that somebody can efficiently get their work done. And one of the things that I love most about my job is when I get to work with ADA coordinators who are supporting employees and really brainstorming ideas to help meet the needs of employees who need this sort of support. Because there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of good ways to piece together apps and programs and ideas to make it possible for somebody to really get their work done in a way that makes the most sense to them and feels the most efficient. Next slide. And then you can use AI as a work support. So this is always really important. Summarizing long emails, summarizing documents, evaluating research, digging into PDFs and sort of extracting important information, rewording emails, mapping out projects, using AI to help with creating graphic organizers or developing presentations. Those are all great ways that AI can serve as a work support for folks with disabilities. And there's really a lot of possibility there that we always try to encourage individuals to explore. Next slide. So what do we do here at the Maryland AT program? So we are the statewide program for assistive technology. Go to the next slide. every state and US territory has a program like ours, and we serve all ages, all disabilities, the entire state of Maryland, and we are free. So there's no application process to come to us. You don't need to fill anything out. You don't need to verify that you have a disability to access any of our services. Next slide. We provide consultation. So again, this is a free service. So folks can come to us. We can sit down and look at different devices that are going to help somebody in whatever context they need some support. They can borrow the equipment for up to 4 weeks at a time. They can try it at home. They can try it at work. And it really is an opportunity to just get that hands-on experience with equipment. We're not selling it, but we are helping folks sort of figure out what's going to work for them in a way that's most comfortable for them. And then we can guide them to how to get that device. Next slide. We also provide a lot of trainings and webinars. So these are just a few that we offer. AT for learning disabilities, AT to combat social isolation, you name it, all kinds of options. So certainly you can visit our YouTube channel and find some of our webinars. Next slide. We run a high-tech AT reuse program. This is where we're taking in gently used devices like video magnifiers, adapted computer or peripherals like computer peripherals like adapted keyboards and mice, communication devices, eye gaze systems. We take in all of that and then we provide it back out to the community for free once we make sure that it's in good working order. And we do have a searchable inventory online where folks can sort of explore what's there. Next slide. We also run a 3-day printing fabrication program, and you are going to hear from Nora next. So I'm not going to get into this too much, but this is an excellent program that we run. And Nora will really dig into the details of this. Next slide. And we run a financial loan program. So anybody that needs to purchase assistive technology or home modifications or vehicles or adapted vehicles, we as a state program do offer a low interest financial loan program that individuals can that individuals can apply to purchase those things that they need. Next slide. I also have a portable ramp project, and I'm kind of talking fast now, but I realize that. But we do have this portable ramp program that we sort of facilitate throughout the state. So at almost every center for independent living around the state, there is a variety of portable ramps. Individuals can reach out, borrow those ramps for up to 4 months at a time. And then once that ramp is in play, somebody's borrowed it, the Center for Independent Living and our program really try to work together to make sure that that family or that individual has all of the needs, all their home modification needs sort of met. If they need longer term accommodations, we start to work with them on what those might be. It's just a way to sort of more holistically support an individual when they have a need for a ramp. Next slide. And we always say follow the map when it comes to assistive technology. When you identify that there is a challenge, reach out to us. We will provide that free consultation. We are specialists in this area, so we can really provide a lot of support and guidance. We have our AT library, so folks can borrow the equipment. It's free, like the public library for books. We are the public library for AT. And then, once that individual makes a decision on what's going to work best for them, we help them find out how to get it, whether they are buying it, whether they're using a program or service to purchase the equipment, or whether they need it through our reuse program if it's available. So just follow the map and we will help you get the AT that you need. Next slide. And with that, you can find us on social media, and I am happy to answer some questions if there are any.
There are. I see a hand, but before we get into that, because we still have Nora to go through, so if you need to stand up and shake off and stretch while we go to the questions, that'll be just fine. And Lori, I wanted to ask you, after we answer the question, maybe just let people know the locations maybe of the AT, because we often get questions and people say, "Do I have to come all the way to Baltimore?" And I know they're around the state, and so if you could just kind of let folks know
Sure,
where.
let me put that into the chat. I'm getting a notice on my computer that it's about to reboot, so I'm talking fast, and I'll hop
Oh,
right back
okay. I'm
on once it reboots. No,
sorry.
but let me put the link to where our libraries are right in the chat, so everybody can sort of go directly to that and see that in, and then hopefully I can answer a question before my
Very
computer
good.
just
And
reboots.
so we have Miss Jean Draper. You have a question. Christina, can you unmute so she can ask her question? Hello.
Hello?
Yes,
Can you
go
hear
ahead
me?
Hello.
with your question.
Real quick, for the ramps, the portable wheelchair ramps, can people take those on vacation out of state? That's it. That's all I had to ask.
Thank you for your question.
That's a great question. Not one I've had before. I would say yes if they are a Maryland resident. The idea being that those ramps are really to provide, a short-term accommodation, visitability, all of those things. So, excuse me. So yes, I would say, if you're going on vacation, you need that to be able to get into your rental or whatever it is. Yeah, I don't think that's a problem as long as you're a Maryland resident.
Very good. Thank you. I don't see any more questions for you, Lori. So I want to thank you for taking your time and thank you all. So next we have Nora Walker coming up, and she's going to talk to us about low tech possibilities and all the things you could do with a 3D printer. There's some contact information for Lori. So I hope everybody got to stretch during this quick turnover. Nora, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you to Stephanie and Christina for having us today, and thank you so much to Lori for that thorough presentation about work accommodations. I am going to talk today about 3D printing technology, what you can do with it, specifically focused on how you can utilize it to create or otherwise access your own assistive technology devices. Next slide, please. So Lori already went through this really well, but just to reiterate in case there are any new folks joining us, what we mean when we use the term assistive technology is really any kind of implement whatsoever that can help somebody, specifically someone with a disability, do something more easily, more safely, more independently. And so Lori went through a lot of fantastic examples, mostly on the higher tech end of the spectrum. But if you think about everything that this definition encompasses, it can include very low tech solutions as well, which can sometimes be really effective and really life changing. And so with 3D printing technology, that's mainly the side that we're going to be focusing on today. Next slide, please. So first of all, we can just kind of lay down a basic working understanding of how 3D printing works. You can see on this screen here, there's a little graphic GIF of a 3D printer that is laying down layer by layer in sequence, thin layers of melted, in this case, plastic, but there are other materials that you can use as well, in a pre-designated pattern, so that can be stacked on top of itself and result in a three-dimensional object. That's the basic idea behind 3D printing in general, no matter what you're using it for. Next slide. On this slide, I have some images of some of the possibilities of what you can make in terms of assistive technology with 3D printing technology. So running through from the top left to the bottom right, we have an adapted grip that you can slide a pen or pencil into to make that easier to manipulate. We have a robotic arm, a little wheelchair for a dog. We've got a prosthetic foot attachment, a small wedge ramp for a wheelchair access for just getting over short barriers. We have adaptations that can clip onto a PlayStation controller to make it easier for certain kinds of people to play video games. And then finally, we have a prosthetic hand attachment. Next slide. And this slide, I have a little video. I'm not sure if we can play the video today, but I just kind of wanted to demonstrate the furthest reaches of what's possible with 3D printing technology. Is this video embedded on the slide here, or should I just kind of explain it?
No, you'll have to explain it.
Okay. So there are actually gigantic industrial 3D printers that can 3D print with concrete or sometimes other kinds of materials. And they can build fully fabricated homes. So this home that's pictured on the screen here was built completely using a 3D printer, aside from just the windows and door frames. So it's the same idea, but it's a very huge 3D printer that is extruding liquid concrete or something similar rather than the plastic that we print with in that same pattern, layer by layer, to actually fabricate a fully functioning home. And some of these homes can be built in a matter of just a couple of days with very little input, physical input from contractors or people. So you can just imagine the possibilities there. Next slide. That being said, we are not building homes here at Maryland Tap, not to get ahead of ourselves, as I say. And I'm going to go over some of the things that we print in our 3D printing lab, and some of the things that you might be able to create or access yourself very easily. I think that the possibilities with 3D printing are pretty incredible, particularly in terms of customization, making things, augmenting things or designing things specifically to suit a very specific individual's needs. And I think that the technology is actually more accessible or has a much lower barrier to access than a lot of people assume. So some of the things that we make are openers that can help you open different sizes of jars or bottles. We have a braille embosser that you can use to emboss the value of your paper money notes so that you can just quick and easily put the braille sign on your money, and you can identify what the value of your paper money is if you're blind or low vision. We have smartphone magnifier stands. So if you don't want to use a dedicated digital magnifier, you can download a free app for your smartphone and use that as your digital magnifier, change the size, the color contrast, and whatnot. And so we have little stands you can just clip your phone into so that you can use that magnifier hands-free. There are all sorts of adaptive grips for different things, like your house key, if it's a little hard to get your fingers manipulated in the way that you need to use a standard key. There's a larger handle. Similarly with eating utensils, with nail clippers. We have text isolation bars that can make it easier to read if you have certain kinds of maybe learning disabilities. And then the last adapter pictured on the screen here is an adapted nail polish applicator holder. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're going to run through 5 steps that can actually get you to 3D printing yourself. So I'm going to run through all of these, accessing a printer, finding and or designing your objects, utilizing what's called slicing software then programming your printer, and finally printing your assistive technology or whatever else you're choosing to print. Next slide. So kind of the most straightforward way to access a printer might be to purchase one. But I do think that there's often a misconception that all 3D printers are exorbitantly expensive, when in fact, the printer that we started our entire program using cost less than $200. Um, so there are, a spectrum of different qualities. The more expensive or high quality a printer is, you might be able to print with multiple colors in one object, print much faster, maybe print better quality or stronger devices. But if you just want to get started, you really can spend about $200 and get going if you want to. So these are three very popular options for kind of home use of 3D printers that I have pictured here on the screen. The Ender 3, which is the one that I mentioned that we started our program with. Then we've got a Bamboo Labs and a Prusa mentioned that are both similar price, between $700 and $800. But there's a broad spectrum of different kinds. One of the reasons I mentioned the Bamboo Labs specifically and the Prusa is that from what I understand, these two are supposed to be the most accessible 3D printers to use for the widest range of people. So I've heard that, for instance, blind people who are interested in 3D printing might find a Bamboo Labs printer to be more accessible to them than maybe the Ender is. Next slide, please. However, that's not the only way you can gain access to a 3D printer that you can utilize yourself. You can also find 3D printers to use without having to purchase one yourself at places like maker spaces, sometimes at public libraries, and oftentimes universities might have them. So on this slide, I have linked, I think, 10 different maker spaces around the state. There are countless maker spaces. So there's very likely one very near your county that you can look into. Next slide, please. And what a maker space is, it's kind of similar to a library, but with equipment and fabrication equipment and machines and materials that people can go and access there in person, so that you don't need to spend all of that money yourself to have that equipment at your house. So these are physical locations. Oftentimes you'll have like a membership fee in order to access the equipment and materials there, but almost across the board, you can find 3D printers at maker spaces. They might have software on their computers that they have there that is costly, or you can access software that you wouldn't otherwise be able to there. Oftentimes they might have other kinds of fabrication equipment or arts equipment, like laser cutters, wood shops, welding gear, sometimes even sewing and embroidery machines. And I mentioned computers and all sorts of other things. So they're really valuable resources if you're kind of a hands-on person. You like crafting and trades and learning skills and doing things yourself. Next slide, please. All right, so once you have found the 3D printer that you're going to use to make your assistive technology or whatever else it is, you need to find or design the files that you'll eventually program into your printer to become your physical objects. One thing that's wonderful about 3D printing and sort of the 3D printing larger community is it's full of people who are really excited about sharing the things that they create or find. So there are numerous open source web databases you can just find on the internet that have free blueprints that other people have created for all kinds of different items that you can 3D print, and this includes assistive technology devices. I have linked here 5 kind of popular searchable databases where you can find free blueprints for 3D printing. Thingiverse and Printables are the 2 that we use the most often. And you can, sometimes you have to be creative about your search terms to find exactly what you're looking for, but there's all kinds of things in there, and they're wonderful resources. Next slide, please. And I think we're not going to be able to play the videos today, but Makers Making Change. If you take nothing else away from today, Makers Making Change is an important one to remember. They are a decentralized organization of makers, especially 3D printers and 3D designers, that specifically create designs for assistive technology devices, from very low tech aids like maybe the adapted pencil grip that I showed earlier, to sometimes much higher tech things. They can add computer chips in, or other electronic elements in some cases. So you can go to the Makers Making Change website and you can download for free the blueprints for all of the different assistive technologies that they create and design, their volunteers create and design. That is where we find the blueprints for many of the items that we print in our program and offer to people for free. And you also can go on to the Makers Making Change website, search through all of the available pieces of assistive technology, and just submit a request to connect with a maker somewhere in the country. And I think they even have volunteers internationally as well now. And you can just be connected with somebody who has a 3D printer or knows how to make that piece of assistive technology for you. They'll make it for you and then send it to you. Sometimes they'll ask that you cover the cost of shipping or maybe marginal cost of materials, but for the most part, it's free and you don't have to do anything. You can just ask for someone to make you the thing and they'll send it to you. So that's a fantastic organization. And we've sort of modeled our internal 3D printing program in some ways after their program. Next slide, please. Oh, next one. All right. But if you really want to get into the nitty gritty and be able to augment things or design your own things, you can get started with computer aided design software. This is the software that allows you to create your 3D models. I have examples here of, as far as I understand, the 2 most popular free CAD, computer aided design software applications or platforms. The first is called Tinkercad. This is the one that I first learned on. It's the simplest and the most straightforward, so it's really good to begin with. It's totally free. You don't even need to download it. You can just go onto the website. It's a free web app and you can get started. You can go on and just kind of play around. You can see a lot of the 3D designs through Tinkercad are very geometric, and you just kind of put together geometric shapes. You can change their shapes and sizes, splice things together, combine things. But it's typically very geometric and simple. And then Blender on the right side of the screen here is also free, just web app, but it's a lot more complex. You can create a lot more kind of organic designs, and you have a lot more sort of capability and flexibility with what you can create. But again, it's a lot more in depth and not quite as user friendly in the beginning. However, there are thousands of YouTube videos and people trying to Skillshare on web forums and things. And you can really learn a lot just by utilizing sort of collective knowledge that people have brought forth and made free on the internet. Next slide, please. And another method of more or less designing something yourself or creating something yourself is 3D scanning. This is really cool. This is something that I've not explored personally yet, but I have seen it in action in other places. So the idea behind 3D scanning is to take a physical three-dimensional object and then have a camera or a video camera take 360-degree footage or images of that three-dimensional object from all angles, so that you basically have a picture of that object from every angle you can. And then the 3D scanner can convert those images into a 3D design or digital file that represents that 3D object. And then you can use that to duplicate that object in plastic or whatever you're using to print. So there are big, expensive 3D scanners that probably work better or maybe more effective, but there is also a free or very cheap app called Polycam that you can download for your smartphone, and you can physically just take as many pictures as you can of an object and then use that to duplicate the object. I've tried playing around with it a little bit. I haven't had any success yet. I haven't had a lot of time with it, but I think that it's just pretty incredible that that kind of technology can be just at our fingertips through our smartphones. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, one of the biggest kind of reasons that I think 3D printing should be focused on and expanded in the world of assistive technology is because of how customized you can make things. So on this slide here, I have some examples of some custom designs that we have been able to create in collaboration with our clients who come to us. Sorry, let me mention the way that our program functions is we have an online catalog of 25 devices that we're consistently offering that people can just request, and we'll just print it out and mail it to their house. But there's also an option to just get in touch with us if there's a different kind of device that you kind of have found designs for that we don't generally offer that you would like to ask for, or if you are struggling with a specific task that you think could be addressed effectively with a very simple design solution, but you don't know exactly what it is maybe, then we can collaborate together and try to come up with something just for you to fit your need. And that's, I think, the best part of this. And the biggest reason why I think it's important for people to know that they can do this themselves if they want to. So I'll just go through again from the top left to the bottom right of these customized designs that we've created in collaboration with the individual that they're designed for. First, in the top right, top left, we have a specific toothpaste cap opener. A man got in touch with us and he wanted to be able to open his own toothpaste cap more easily. Designs that he had found for devices prefabbed on Amazon or off the shelf all required some amount of squeezing or grip strength in order to clasp the cap and get it off, and that didn't work well for him. So we worked together to design this device where there's a hole that is shaped just like the toothpaste cap, so you can slip it right on. It's a snug fit, and he could just kind of push the handle and open the cap himself. We have made joystick toppers for people's wheelchairs. a little guitar pick adapter for a woman who was just picking up guitar and she had a progressive disability that impacted her hand control and small motor function in her hands. But this little adapter for the guitar pick really worked for her, and she was able to use the guitar pick. We have made a mouse-operated, mouse-controlled stylus for a kid so that he could control his iPad by putting the stylus in his mouth and biting down, and then he'd have good control. And then a couple of different cup holder attachments that would screw onto wheelchairs or walkers. Next slide, please. All right. And so once you have designed your, or just downloaded the plans for your assistive technology or your other item, you will have to then download what's called slicing software. The most popular free one that I'm aware of is called Cura, which I think I have mentioned on the next slide. But you basically upload your digital design file, which is called an STL file, into this what's called slicing software. And what it will do is divide down the 3D object into two-dimensional layers stacked on top of each other, as you can kind of see pictured here, so that the 3D printer will be able to read it that way and subsequently lay down the plans layer by layer, because it can't just bloop out a whole three-dimensional object in one go. It has to do it slowly, layer by layer on top of each other until they until it creates the final object. Next slide, please. Yes, so here is a screenshot of what the Cura slicing software looks like. This yellow thing is the object that's going to be 3D printed. You can get into the settings and change different aspects of it, change how dense the object will be, how fast the nozzle for the printer is moving, how high the quality of the print will be, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can slice it into those layers so that you can then export it into a file that the 3D printer will be able to read and follow. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so after all of that, and I'm sorry it's kind of getting into nitty gritty. Please, anyone, if you have any questions at any point, or you want me to slow down or repeat anything, please just raise your hand or put it in the chat, and I'm happy to do so. But then you can load up or program your printer. The way that you do this will depend on the printer that you have. Typically, it can be very straightforward. Oftentimes, you can just use like an SD card or a thumb drive. Take whatever computer you're using to work on the object, the design files, the slicing software, and just upload that file onto your thumb drive or your SD card, plug that directly into your printer, and you should be able to be good to go then. Sometimes you can connect via Bluetooth directly from your computer to your printer, depending on what kind of printer you have. Some of them might have internal kinds of software platforms to program and run things via Bluetooth connection, or you may be able to just hardwire your computer directly to the printer as well. Some of the higher tech printers you can also control remotely from your smartphone or your computer anywhere that you are, and you can kind of plug and play and just program it to print at a certain time or reprint at a different time or what have you, which is pretty cool. All right, next slide, please. So we call the material that we use to actually print with filament. And filament can come in a lot of different materials. It can come in nylon, polystyrene, or resin, even carbon fiber. There are types of plastic that are run through with metal or wood that people use to create stronger things. And as you heard earlier, sometimes you can even print with cement. But here at Maryland Tap, we only print with plastic right now, and plastic is by far the most common and lowest cost thing to print with. The plastic that we print with is called PLA, which is an organic plant derivative plastic. And the plastic comes in spools. That's what these rainbow things that are pictured on here. So it's just kind of a thin strand of the plastic filament rolled into a spool, which you can load into your printer, and then your printer will heat to a certain level so that the plastic melts very quickly, and then it cools very quickly, almost on impact. So you melt this plastic to extrude it in those layers, and then it cools almost immediately and becomes just solid. Okay, next slide, please. And then you should be good to go. You can load up your file and essentially click print on your printer, and then sit back and relax. As long as your printer is leveled and programmed to the right specifications. Many printers will kind of auto program themselves. So depending on how much control and how nuanced you want to get with your settings, and sort of how analog or not you want the experience to be, that can depend on which kind of printer you choose to get. Our little less than $200 printer is very finicky and doesn't want to stay level, and you have to kind of be there a lot of the time for the beginning of the print and make sure everything's going smoothly. But many of them will just kind of do that for you. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this slide, I have some sort of maybe more nitty-gritty little tips that might be good to remember if you are starting to print. I mentioned bed leveling. What this means is the platform that the item will actually print onto, so that your 3D printer is extruding those layers directly onto. If you think about it, it will have to be very, very flat and perfectly level so that the print will come out evenly. Even if it's just, I mean, the layers that you're printing with are typically maybe a millimeter tall or something. So there's a lot of room for error, and it needs to be relatively precise in order to get a good print. So that's one of the most important first things to make sure you have down before you get your print going. I also think it's important to mention that the process can be very slow. Even creating a small object can take a really long time. And this will depend and vary based on what kind of printer you're using. Some of them are much faster than others, but it can take hours and hours to print something, even kind of small to medium size. I think sometimes if people don't understand how the process works, you kind of imagine that it'll just print like you print a document on your LaserJet printer or something, and it's just some like bloop, 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 and creates something right away. But if you really think about all of those tiny layers of 1 millimeter of height, it takes a very long time. Oh, I also think it's important to mention that once your whole print is finished and you have your final object, it's likely to stick to that build plate or the bed. So you can use a putty knife, metal putty knife, to help to get that off. Next slide, please. Okay, and finally, and I mentioned this when I first talked about the organization Makers Making Change, but if you would prefer not to, or it doesn't make sense for you to access your own printer, to go through all of these steps, to learn all of the software, to do all of this stuff, which you can do, but you need to put some time into it. You can also just choose to outsource your printing. And I mentioned Makers Making Change. They have a huge catalog database of all kinds of different things that you can request to have made and sent to you. Again, there might sometimes be a small cost associated with that program for materials. There's another program called Enabling the Future, or eNable, and they do something somewhat similar, but they focus specifically on upper extremity prosthetics. So they do kind of larger and sometimes higher tech or more in depth, more complex builds, but they're similar to Makers Making Change in that they are a decentralized global network of makers designing and printing these prosthetics for people and then providing those, I think most of the time, free of charge. There's a great chapter of Enabling the Future in Washington, D.C. that we work with sometimes, particularly if we get requests for creation of objects that are outside of our capacity or what we're able to do. We can sometimes connect them with the Enabling the Future representatives in DC, and sometimes people can get what they need that way. There is also a organization called Volunteers for Medical Engineering. They're a wonderful program. They're run in conjunction with the Image Center now, which is the Center for Independent Living serving Baltimore County and City. And they employ volunteers. Sometimes they're engineering college students or retired medical engineers. And these people will invite disabled people from the community to bring like a design challenge to them, basically, and they can work with that individual to really customize something or build something new for them. So Volunteers for Medical Engineering employs a lot of different kinds of materials and whatnot, not only 3D printing, but they do utilize 3D printing as well when it makes sense for what they're building. And that is typically a free program as well. When I think it's isolated for people in Maryland, but I think it's a free program typically as well. They run, I think it's monthly adapted bicycle clinics. So usually kids with physical disabilities or maybe other kinds of disabilities who would like to ride a bike but don't have one that works for them can bring their bike to the Volunteers for Medical Engineering program and have that bike adapted to fit their needs really well so that they can ride their bike. And then lastly is our program, Maryland TAP. And I have all of these four linked in this slide here so that you can just click on it and go straight there if you have the slides. But through our program, you know, it functions relatively similar to how these other ones function, and you can go and just look through our catalog and request something directly. Pick what color you want it to be printed in. We'll fabricate it and ship it to your house for free. Or again, you can reach out and bring us a design challenge. Because of our know-how, and you know, we're still somewhat relatively new to the whole process of 3D printing, and we only have so much equipment and capacity at the moment, but we can, especially if it's something smaller and lower tech right now, we can often work together to design something specifically for you and then again give that to you for free. All right, next slide, please. Yes, this is the same slide that Lori brought up about our AT fabrication program. And in the image on the right side of the screen, you can see some examples of some of the things that we print consistently that you might not have seen in previous slides. So we also have grocery bag carriers that can relieve pressure on someone's hand and distribute weight more evenly for carrying grocery bags or other things similar. We've got button hooks that can help people do their buttons, can adapters, so you can take a soda can and clip it into this adapter and it'll give it a handle to make it easier to hold. Just standard toothpaste squeezers. We can make key guards for AAC or communication devices to help to isolate the buttons on the screen if somebody has trouble isolating their fingers to those buttons themselves. And on this slide, I also have linked directly to that request form. So you can go to our website and request your own things to be shipped to you. Next slide, please. So one of the main things that I think is wonderful about this topic is assistive technology, even the lower tech stuff, oftentimes can cost a lot of money and it's very rarely covered by insurance. And so ways to be able to get that same stuff that you need for free or low cost can be really significant. And so I wanted to mention some other resources around the state that you can access to receive free assistive technology. And so the first one is our program's assistive tech reuse program, which Lori did touch on, but I don't know. I'll reiterate quickly each of these because I don't know how many new people we might have joining us. But our reuse program is a donation-based program. We have a physical location in Columbia, Maryland, where we accept donations of gently used assistive technology devices. And that's generally focused on the higher tech stuff. So more of the kinds of things that Lori was talking about in her presentation. It might be adapted telephones, hearing and alerting devices, Braille note takers, adapted computer keyboards and mice, things like that, communication devices. And then those donated items are sanitized really well, refurbished if they need to be repaired, and we make sure that they're in really good working order, and then can offer those out for free to people in the community who need them and can't otherwise access them. And those we call open-ended loans. So the individual can keep that item for free for as long as they need it. We just ask that if they someday no longer need it, they return it to us so we can make it available to someone else in the future. There's our assistive technology loan library, which is where I'm sitting right now. I think Lori mentioned we have actually 9 of these around the state, but our most robust kind of primary one is in Baltimore City next to Morgan State University. And that's where you can come schedule a consultation with one of our specialists, talk about things you might be having challenges with that you are interested in possible assistive tech solutions for. And then you can try things out in person, look at things virtually, receive recommendations over a phone call, and either try things in person in the library and then take them home with you to borrow if you're interested, or if a virtual consultation or phone consultation feels sufficient, we can ship devices through the mail for you to then borrow. Typically, the loans will last for 1-month periods, but if someone really needs to keep that device for longer for some reason and there's no waiting list for that device, we can often be pretty flexible about that time period. And this is very valuable because, as I said, insurance rarely will cover assistive technology devices. They're often very expensive. And I've spoken with lots of people who hear about a device that it sounds like will fit their need really well, and they drop hundreds or even thousands of dollars on it, and then come to find out that it doesn't actually work super well for them specifically. So this library is a fantastic way to avoid that situation. Or if you are just kind of interested in getting a sense of what's out there, what might work for you, or if you need a device on a shorter term basis as an accommodation. There is also a durable medical equipment reuse program. So this one is run through the Department of Aging, but it's available to people, all people in Maryland of any age. Um, and that program functions the same way that our high-tech assistive technology reuse program functions, but they focus on the durable medical side. So that's going to be things like mobility equipment, wheelchairs and walkers, transfer aids, hospital beds, even power wheelchairs and electric scooters, things like that, which we don't do much of in our program because there's sort of a legal distinction between durable medical equipment and other assistive technologies. And this wonderful program exists to help fill that gap as well. They have an enormous warehouse out in PG County and a ton of equipment. One thing that's different about their program than ours is they'll typically require a medical professional, depending on what the device it is, specifically a occupational therapist or physical therapist to complete a portion of your request form. But then typically if they have the equipment that you need, you can get that for free. There's also in the same location as our reuse program in Columbia is the Howard County Loan Closet. So they focus on the durable medical equipment as well, but they function as a loan closet. So you can keep the durable medical devices that you borrow from them for a period of time and then return it after the loan period is up. And lastly, I wanted to mention the Maryland Accessible Telecommunications Program. This is a program connected with Maryland Relay, and they focus on helping people to obtain telecommunication access devices that are accessible to them. So this includes all kinds of different telephones, like adapted telephones that might just be simpler, they might be amplified, they might be voice controlled. It can also include video conferencing software that might work better for people who speak ASL or are deaf. It can include Braille devices, like Lori mentioned, Braille displays and note takers, which can function as telecommunication devices when used in conjunction with a phone or something like that. There's a broad spectrum of things that are offered through the telecommunications program. And there is an application process to be approved for those services. But once you're approved, they'll look at income and different things. But once you're approved, they will actually give you a voucher to purchase the equipment yourself. So you're getting something new. You'll have a consultation with someone to identify what's on the market that'll likely work the best for you. And then you can just buy that and keep your device for free. Next slide, please. Well, here's another video. So it's essentially just a little commercial for our program. It goes over the different services that we offer, which Lori also touched on. We've got our loan libraries and our reuse program and our 3D printing fabrication program that I mentioned. We also do training and different events, and we have an IT accessibility team as well. So this is a team that'll remediate all of our digital content, our websites and everything, and make sure that all of the digital content that we are putting out as a program is as accessible as it can be for people who use screen readers to access their computers, and make sure that everything is written in clear, plain language. And this team will also work with other state agencies and sometimes other programs to train on best practices for digital accessibility and IT accessibility. And then also, in some cases, will help other programs, other state agencies remediate their web content and digital content for access. Next slide, please. All right, and this slide I've just linked our kind of direct program contact information. We are kind of a small but mighty team. We serve the entire state of Maryland, everyone in the state, but we don't have a large staff. So you can contact our general program contact information and pretty quickly be connected to whichever representative for whichever program you're interested or whichever service you're interested in accessing. And that concludes my presentation. We have finished a little early, I think, because we weren't able to play the videos today. But yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you,
I know there's a
Nora.
lot of information.
I do have two questions for you. So for the first one,
Great,
for
please.
the places like the live, and anyone else has a question, pop it in the question box or raise your hand. But for the places like the library and other marketplaces where people can go to get things made, is there a cost for the is there any cost for the um oh my goodness, the words have left me now. Any cost for the equipment or for the materials? I'm sorry, for the materials.
Is this in regards to accessing a 3D printer at
No,
a certain location?
you showed a list of places like you said the library or the other marketplaces where you could go and maybe have where people are together and you have access to a free 3D
Oh, the
printer.
maker
The
spaces.
maker spaces.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so typically there will be a membership fee, like a monthly cost that you can pay to utilize all of the equipment in a makerspace. That fee will vary depending on which makerspace you are accessing or which one you live the closest to. I think there are some public libraries that might have 3D printers that you can just access with your regular library card for free as well. And a lot of maker spaces will also have kind of one-time visitor fees. So if you just have one project that you want to complete, or you just need to access the equipment for like a day or two, you can pay a different smaller fee just for a shorter period of time.
Very good. Thank you. And is 3D printing being done at all your sites or primarily in Baltimore?
3D printing is only being done in Baltimore, at our Baltimore location right now. But we also do partner with UMBC and their 3D printing lab, and they help us with a lot of our overflow prints and sometimes help us with designing custom designs. But everything that we print, like our whole 3D printing program, is basically run through the mail. So most of the time, the way that people will acquire any of our 3D printed devices is just reach out and ask for it, and we'll just send it to your house for free.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Nora and Lori, if you're still here. I appreciate you sharing all this great information. We saw a lot of cool things. Every time I sit through one of our Let's Talk Tech, see 100 things that I want for myself. So I hope others benefited as well, and I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Please feel free to reach out to Lori or Nora if you have any additional questions. And thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, Stephanie.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, have a
Yes,
good
thank you.
afternoon, everyone.
Take care.